Welcome. This is a Curious Miniature Adventure, a podcast about learning and growth, specifically within the art of miniature painting. We don't do shallow takes, we don't wade, we dive. My name is Devin Bush, aka Brush Adept on Instagram and online, and I've been painting for many years. I've been doing some competition painting as well as teaching at Adepticon, Las Vegas Open, and at the Nova Open. And my co-host here, Dan Dougal. He is a painter, an instructor, and a chromatic warrior who's also won many awards at ReaperCon, Adepticon, Nova, and even Monte Sansevino. What are we diving into today, Dan?
Thanks, Devin. Yeah, we're digging into a good one today, Devin. We are diving into how to learn, right?
Okay.
We're all on this journey, right? And
Oh,
wherever
yeah.
you are, you've still got some places to go. You've still got some learning to do, right? So
Oh, yeah.
we're gonna take a good long look at how to learn, how to practice, how to get curious about how we learned and some of the thoughts, and then we'll have some thoughts on how to craft your own personal learning journey as you to help you reach your goals.
Sweet. Yeah, that sounds
All right,
awesome. Sounds
all right,
crunchy. Sounds deep.
sounds good. All right.
But first off, what you working on today, Dan?
Well, so I just finished up a packet, a group of Reaper bugbears. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you might notice from the last episode, like
Yeah.
new studio.
I
So the new
got that elephant in the room. It's so
right.
cool. It's so cool.
So the studio is finished and I absolutely love it down here. It's great. It's everything I wanted. Everything from, my airbrush booth, all my paints, everything. Like, I love it. I did the
That's so
right thing
cool.
by moving down here.
Love
But
it.
what was strange was I sat down like to start painting again, and it was just sort of weird, right? It was a new environment. It was a new place. Like everything is in a different place now. I'm like, okay, well, like for the most part, like these paints are mostly organized in the same way, but they're behind me now instead of like on a shelf in front of me. So it took some time to kind of get used to sort of the new
Probably
environment
some
and what everything
habits you
was.
kind of break out of and stuff, right?
Sure.
Like you're
Yeah.
so accustomed to it being on your left, and now all of a sudden it's behind you or it's on your right
Right.
or whatever. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And so I sat down to start painting on a bust that I had been working on,
Hmm.
but I hadn't painted really in 2 weeks or so because I was just focused on getting the room finished. And I picked him up, and he's right here. I picked him up, and I'm like, no,
Yeah,
because he's at the stage where he needs a lot of refinement.
sure, sure.
And I wasn't quite ready for that. So I'm like, I just need a quick project, tabletop, personal project to just get the paint flowing again.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I picked up this 5 pack of Reaper bugbears that had been sitting on my shelves for months and months and months. They'd been primed, I got them ready, and they just sat there for months at a time. And so I'm like, okay, it's time to get them off the desk and into the
There you
painting
go.
cabinet.
And
So
sometimes just like you said, letting the paint flow is just that's really
yeah,
like all the objective needs to be and stuff like that.
right,
I get that, right? I've been working on my super special secret diorama, and
nice.
I was a fool thinking that I can finish the build in a week and a half or so. And I looked at everything and I realized like I'm gonna need the entire month of June. So that's all I've been doing. I'm covered.
Wow.
Everything has been covered in resin dust or plastic dust or like
Yeah,
glue piles and pockets and everything like
sure.
that. And
And bits and
so,
scraps of plastic here and
oh,
bits
oh
of
my gosh,
scraps
I
of
have to
yeah.
after after this, I've got to go vacuum, and I'm sure it's gonna be like crunch, 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 of all this stuff. But
Yeah.
I I'm actually really really happy with my progress on it because I'm doing this project a little different. One is I am well, I'm planning, right? I have
Ooh.
everything sketched
There you
out.
go.
I've got an inspiration
All right.
board all on it, and I've got everything kind of prepped and like, what do I need to do? What do I need to accomplish so that I can literally tick things off, scratch things out, and stuff. Um, One, I want to try it, and two, there's so many moving parts that like I just kind of need to do a brain dump
Mm-hmm.
Normally I can just kind of groove and go, but this I'm like, I'm gonna try something different. And sometimes I fight it a little bit, but it's been really good. And I think I've been growing and learning a lot and learning to give myself a little bit more time than what I foolishly thought it would be.
Well,
So,
there's always that. Every project
oh yeah.
takes longer than you think.
Hey, we learn, right? And I think flexing those different ways to learn and just kind of figuring out that like this didn't work for me, this did work for me, I think it's a valuable I think it's a valuable process in and of itself, um, which kind of flows into my topic here, right?
Yeah, we'll go ahead then. Jump right
Yeah,
in.
so we're going to talk about learning, right? And oh, I don't know. I was actually talking to a coworker who knows nothing about our world. His comments when he sees some of the work that I've done, because he'll ask from time to time, he goes, "That's really cool." That's about as
Mm-hmm.
far as it goes. Or like,
Sure.
"Wow, that's 3D." Or like, "Oh, that's cool,"
Yeah.
which is totally fine, right? It's not his
Right.
world and everything. But
Yeah.
um, he said, "Oh yeah, so what are you guys going to be talking about?" I said, "Well, we're going to talk about learning." He goes, "That seems like a really, I don't think you could talk about that for very long." And I was like, you would be surprised. So,
We're a couple of hardcore nerds here, man.
well, yeah, and
Yeah.
like, I mean, I guess any topic is as deep as you're willing to go, right? And we
Sure.
dive, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I really like about this portion is what some people call the learning styles or learning modalities. It's just the way that we learn. And in university, I actually took an elective course all about this. It was like this hodgepodge mix of basically life skills. And it was stuff like how to build your resume, how to speak in front of people properly, how to conduct yourself in a professional way. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the ways was, learning how you learn. So as a fun little aside, my godfather would always joke. He goes, why are you going to college? The only thing you're going to learn is your social security number. I'm like, well, that's extremely true. But the biggest thing I really did learn is I learned how I learn and how to learn. And that's kind of represented in these four learning styles. And
To be
this
fair,
is not an
I have never forgotten my social security number since.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Same. So this is not an exhaustive list, right? I've seen multiple things that spread it out into like 7, 8, 12 learning styles,
Right.
right?
Sure.
But I feel like four is a pretty graspable number and it's not overwhelming. You can dive into the weeds into each one of them if you want,
Mm-hmm.
into like these different sub modalities. But I think this encapsulates it pretty well. Okay. So just quick little bullet points. We've got auditory, visual, reading slash writing, and kinesthetic. Okay. So we're going to start with the
Okay.
first one,
All right.
auditory. It is an oral mode, or meaning like the information that you're hearing or speaking. Okay. So oral as in you're intaking it through your ears, or oral as in you're emitting from your mouth, right?
Gotcha.
Um, this is this tends to be that lecture hall format where you have some mentor, professor, guru, whatever, who
Somebody's
is
behind the podium.
exactly, and they're talking, right? And you are absorbing that information in that particular way. And there is also what people kind of discount is there's also the participation, which is the back and forth of
Mm.
asking,
Mm-hmm.
raising your hand, asking a question, speaking your concerns, and making sure that you do, in fact, understand what it is they're saying, right? Because somebody could say all of these things at you, but if there isn't that kind of feedback loop going, did you actually learn anything? Maybe not, right? So one of the little notes that I put in here is that those who consider themselves like auditory learners, or they're in that auditory modality, doesn't necessarily mean that they are like, if I listen, it's perfect. It just means that they tend to favor it, right?
Gotcha.
Um, right, kind of like when we were talking about our motivations and like our motivational styles last time. it's not a it's not a zero sum game. There's levels to it, right?
Right. And there's
But they
mixes.
exactly. And so
Right.
some people may go, I can hear much better and I'm fine, right? Other people within that auditory family are like, well, I can hear that, but what I really need to do is I need to like regurgitate that. I need to speak it back to you, right?
Right. Sure.
So they tend to learn best from things like lectures, group discussions. I mean, even something as it's hard, it's weird to say this, but archaic as like a radio broadcast,
Mm.
email messaging, podcasts. Hey,
Right.
and even like speaking or talking things through, right? Like if you've ever been with those people, you may be one of those people yourself about, I just need to talk this through, right?
Right. You
So
need to
that's
talk it
the
out.
first style, and this is all
Okay.
very 10,000 foot level kind of a vibe, right? But one of the really important things about this particular learning style is I think it kind of goes really hand in hand with your environment, right?
Mm.
And what I've noticed about this, and some of the lectures that I listened to, or even in that that class in school, or these YouTube videos that I've watched and stuff, people tend to lean really heavily on a very um, closed sanctuary kind of atmosphere for learning, right?
Mm.
I'm in a
Okay.
classroom setting. That is my learning mode, right? So they're like almost like they're flipping their brain into that learning mode. And so when
Gotcha.
you're doing this at home or you're doing this on your own, that might mean that I'm going to go and learn into this. That goes to show you how much I've learned. I'm going to go dive into this and learn. I need to turn everything off. I need to close the
Mm.
door, right? All
Right.
the distractions, because I need to focus, right, so that I can really process this. Does this
Right.
make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
What do you have any thoughts on it?
No, I'm just I'm listening. I'm just
Yeah. Oh,
listening.
cool. Awesome. The next one that we'll talk about, I really connect with quite a bit is visual, right? That seems pretty straightforward, but it's what you see, right? It's it's having charts and graphs put up on a projection screen on the whiteboard, or even just having visual references for your art, for example. I know that on our first episode we talked about how I learned from your color theory. We learned about
Mm-hmm.
the color wheel and plotting. I have that all posted up right up here, right? Because I tend to lean very visual. um, I like to kind of smack myself with the hammer with visual aids and stuff. So I actually bought a small Polaroid that I can
Okay.
connect to my phone, and I literally print out my projects on little cards. So like the different reference
Oh, neat.
photos and stuff like that,
Yeah.
because I hoard all of these reference photos on my phone, but then I never access them.
Oh, sure.
So I've kind of found a way to just kind of get that information into like kind of a bit of a physical form. I mean, and I connect with it a little bit more. So
Right.
this visual preference, um, is it like this depiction of information. I'm sure you might, or other people might, like love maps, diagrams, charts. There's like a really
Yeah. Yeah.
cool
Right.
visual aspect to it. And there's specifically, well, one of the things that I put in our notes here is hierarchies, right? That is such an easy way to disseminate that information, and visual learners can pick it up like that, right? Just like
So
the
when you
snap of the fingers.
when you say hierarchies, are you
Hmm.
talking about like learning a hierarchy, or are you like expand on that a little bit?
Yes. So when I say hierarchies, I'm going to put it in a bit of a loose definition, and what I mean by that is it can be as simple as like a chart, right? Where you've got that like a table chart or a graph
Yeah.
chart, so you
Sure.
can
Okay.
see a
Yeah.
hierarchy of a difference between things. A hierarchy
Okay.
also being that like I have a hierarchy contrast
Mm-hmm.
little note card on my desk, and I can look at it and very quickly, immediately, I know first, second, third. There's the hierarchy,
Gotcha.
right? Right. I've got
Gotcha.
a color wheel contrast. I've got
It shows you the relationships between the things.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. I
Okay.
have color zones for the face, right? The yellow, the
Right.
red, the blue, and then I have
Right.
another one that's more expounded. Immediately, I can go, boom, I got it, right? I
Gotcha.
understand exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not to say that an auditory learner can't pick up on that, but I think visual learners with that kind of preference and learning style, I
Mm-hmm.
think it just clicks.
Right.
It clicks with them,
Right.
right? All right. So,
All right. So
um,
reading and writing.
the last thing on the visual thing is pictures worth
Sorry.
1,000 words,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So what will lead into reading and writing. This one, I'm going to put a small caveat in this, and we'll come back to that in a second. Okay.
Okay.
The reading writing preference tends to be like information displayed as words. Think of the people who like, I really want to read a book and I want to read the physical book of it.
Hmm.
There's a connection.
That's me.
Yeah, there's a connection there, right? Where it's not just I'm reading, you can attest to this. Reading on a screen versus reading on physical paper,
It's different.
totally different, right? We reread and we process these things differently. And part of my research in this is that whenever it's a screen, because of the electronic synapses and blue light that connect with
Mm-hmm.
our brain, we scan and we scan vertically. Whereas whenever we have a physical copy of something on paper, we scan horizontally. So we legitimately read differently, right?
Interesting. I don't think I ever knew that.
Tr-
Or I never thought about it.
yeah,
I never realized
pay
that.
attention. When you're
Yeah.
looking through a large document via email, you'll notice that you're going to do this. But if you're looking
You
through a
scan vertically. Yeah.
exactly, because you're like, where is it? Because we
Right.
got that scroll. Whereas when
Yeah.
we're looking through a book, especially I should say in the West, right? We typically left to
Mm-hmm.
right. Obviously, if you're in a different
Right.
country and different history in that regard, you right to left or whatever. Um, yeah, pay attention to on that. It's really interesting. So this preference tends to emphasize text-based input and output. Um, Reading and writing in many different forms, but really in terms of like reports, essays, or even text messages and emails. Um, Speaking from like a more of a corporate setting, like a professional setting,
Mm-hmm.
the people who favor the reading and writing tend to like, you know what, don't talk to me. Like just send it in an email, right? They're going to get the
Right.
most out of that.
Yeah.
People who uh, tend to prefer this style or this modality, I put this in here, is they're often addicted to PowerPoint, to lists, to
Mm.
diaries, or like quotations and words just in general, right?
Sure.
Do you have
Yeah.
any thoughts on the reading modality?
Well, so until you had me until you said PowerPoint.
It's just yeah, it's not an exhaustive list
No,
for
I know,
sure.
I know. Well, it's a personal thing. I spent a lot of years in corporate America, and I absolutely hate PowerPoint. I mean, I still
I
use
agree.
it, but I think probably um, as I think about my own learning, right? I tend to do pretty well in classroom or
Okay.
situations. But when I'm thinking about it, I also really like the visual parts. I like the charts. I like the sketches. I like the scribbles. And then, but so I'm also writing. So usually, if I'm taking a class, I take copious notes. I take a lot of notes. I'll draw diagrams or sketches or whatever. So I wonder. I wonder how much of a mix of each of those things I am, right? Because I find myself leaning into multiple modalities here.
And I'm glad that you brought that up because you're going to have a preference towards one, but that doesn't mean you won't learn in any one of those four.
Gotcha,
It's just
gotcha,
that
gotcha.
maybe it's not your preference. If you're forced to, yeah, sure, you can.
Right.
It may not be the easiest for you, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the final modality, which is kinesthetic, is my biggest preference. If that's the way that we can do it, if I have that option, I'm gonna do it. And my
Okay.
lowest preference would be auditory. It
Okay.
just to hear someone listen and drone on and on and on it's just not my preference. Now, if it's something that I'm very interested in, I can adapt, I can adjust. But if it's something that I couldn't give a rip about,
Right.
I wander. My mind goes all over the
Sure.
place. So
So explain kinesthetic a little bit better then.
yeah. So kinesthetic is the preference by doing. It's a preference that's associated with physically doing the thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, I
Hands
like to
on.
work. I like to work with my hands, right? But it can be a little bit broader than that, and it may not necessarily just be actually doing the thing. It's also relating to the learner from the learnee, from the student to teacher, about how it can be applied or how it can actually work in the real life. So
Gotcha.
this is where a lot of people can have the stubborn, well, why? Well, that was me. Well, why? Well,
Mm-hmm.
why would I ever do that? And it's not because I'm challenging your authority as a person. It's more of just you haven't hit that we haven't met yet at that connection as to
Right. Sure.
why I would do this.
Right.
So I'll give a brief little example on this. When I first learned about color gamuts, I learned a little bit about it. I read it in the James Gurney, the
Mm-hmm.
color and light book, like we
Yeah.
all look at, and it was really really dense. I read it. It sounded interesting. I understood all the words, but why? Like, like
Right.
how can I
Yeah.
apply this? I
Yeah.
learned it from one of my mentors. Okay, I learned a little bit more, but why? Well, because that's you're going to get the best out of it, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Why?
Why? Yeah.
Right? And so as you kind of go through this journey, I want somebody to make that connection as to why. I want somebody to
Gotcha.
make that connection as to this is going to be helpful, useful, applicable in many different ways. And a lot of times metaphors tend to be very, very useful to
Okay.
kinesthetic learners. Is being able to take this large abstract concept, break it down, utilize a metaphor as to why a certain thing will do the, and it tends to reach us, it tends to reach
Yeah.
me a lot easier, a lot better, and they want
Mm-hmm.
to see how it relates to that situation. um
Right.
a personal example on this for me is I always hated word problems growing
Mm.
up. Like if Sally did, it's like, oh, why? Well, it's just to illustrate, and it's like, no, but you're not. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand
Right.
why. Like, why would this actually be why would Sally be trading her apples for candy? Like I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me, right?
Right.
And that some
Right.
people might say, hey, word problem is really connected with me because it was able to like flip that switch into my brain to take away from numbers back into words and stuff. But it just it never worked for me. Maybe I
Gotcha.
shouldn't say never, but like it's not a preference. So auditory, visual, reading, and kinesthetic or doing. Right.
Gotcha.
So I got a question for you, Dan. Is there one or two of these that you tend to lean towards more?
I probably lean more toward the reading writing. I like I enjoy reading. I try to read as often as as often as I can. Every day at lunch, I go out to my car to eat, and I don't care if it's 100 degrees outside or 30 below. I go out to my car, and in part because it's quiet out there, right?
Sure,
So,
sure.
uh, and I bring a book, and so I'll eat my lunch, and then I'll pick up the book, and I'll read at least a few pages before I have to go back in. I've burned through several books that way. Most of the art of books from Dave Taylor, I've read most of those books in that way. I
Nice.
got another. I usually have something on my Kindle. I usually have an audiobook going, which is usually like like a fantasy book or something like that, and then dead tree versions for anything I'm actually trying to learn.
So, okay. It's interesting that you mentioned you're using three different mediums on that. Can you expound upon why you're using the three different mediums?
Well, for the audiobooks, it's low. Like I can go for a walk and listen to an audiobook, and it keeps the boredom away. Right? If I have
Okay.
to, right? So I've got a not every day I can get outside and go for a walk. Some days, especially throughout the winter time, I got to get on a treadmill. I hate the treadmill. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It's so damn boring, right? Well, having an entertaining audiobook running in my ears can keep me on the treadmill longer than if I've got nothing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's more entertaining. And I don't tend to remember and retain that information as well. And so it's like lower value. It's entertainment value, right? Um,
Interesting.
if I need to retain something, I pick up a Dead Tree version. And I'll, whether I'm studying it or if I'm reading it, because I'm trying to like reference something. Um, James Gurney's book, I've read that book a couple of times, and
Hmm.
I'll read it probably 2 or 3 more times before some of it starts sinking in. But if I'm trying to learn something, I go for a physical copy.
That's really interesting because I'm very similar in those regards. I used to devour books as a kid. Like I now most of it was just it was mostly like fantasy type stuff, right? It was just fiction. It was just like in between doing the thousands of other sports and activities, my mom could just go, "Oh, you're into reading? I will buy you as many books as you need." And so I would just devour books. And what's kind of interesting is school kind of knocked that out of me because
Mm.
then you go through high school and then you go through college and all these different things and you're reading so much really dry, boring crap. It's like I don't want to look at another book. I started to turn to audiobooks.
Gotcha.
Um and same thing. Just to turn my brain off a little bit, just kind of stave the boredom away. But I all of the things that I really want to learn or retain, especially all of my information books, yeah, they're all the dead, like what you say, the dead tree versions.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
because
physical copies.
yep,
Because
because
I
you
can
can
write on them. Like, so the way that
yes,
you process a physical book, I think, and I've done a little bit of digging around on this, especially as like kids learning from digital media and screens and kids learning from physical books. A bunch of research has been done recently on this, and they're starting to find out that like kids that learn on digital media don't just simply don't do as well as kids who learn from physical books. And so there's a growing collection of scientific research into this, and um, the our brains are wired for maps and spatial relativity, right? Like we place things in space in relation to other things in space. So in a physical book, you can it's easier to kind of remember. Like online, it's easy to go just tap search and just find it, but you have no idea how deep into the book it is, right? In a physical book, you can kind of remember, oh, I was about halfway through
yeah,
because I physically remember like having that many pages on either side, or this was
yeah.
toward the front of the book or toward the back of
Or
the
you
book.
can even start to see the binding in the middle, so that
Yeah,
like
the
sticks in your
binding in the
brain.
middle. Yeah. Where it was on the page? Was it on the left page or the right page? Was it top third, bottom third? Where it was on the page, it was next to this other picture. So our brains kind of like start to map this stuff together, and that's how we. I mean, that's how we find our way in the world. Is we map things out. And so a book kind of leans into that way of us, the way that we're kind of thinking about the world anyway. And so I find that my retention's better with a physical book. I'm also finding out though that as I have gone through this painting journey, right? Um, I can watch all the videos, I can read all the books, and it doesn't stick until I actually do it. It doesn't stick until I've practiced it many, many times. So in
Yeah,
that
for
in
sure.
that in that part, I will practice, and then I might read it again, and then practice some more, and practice some more, and then read it again, or watch that video again, and then practice some more. So it's that back and forth, going back and forth between. Oftentimes it's reading, sometimes it's visual and auditory visual, like whether it's a YouTube video or something like that, or from a class. But
For sure.
or
Uh,
from
I
notes from a class?
I I very much want to touch a little bit on that. So in this class that I took, the professor was phenomenal at this and said essentially we don't none of us have any of these modalities or these styles in 0%,
Gotcha.
meaning
Right.
we
Yeah.
are going to learn at some point in some degree in some fashion from each of these styles or modalities. It's
Mm-hmm.
now just the proportion in which you not even that you can, it's also that you want to like devote attention to. So like
Right.
as a kid you might be very much more of a visual learner, but then as time goes through and you have all these experiences, you do these different things, you get into different hobbies and aspects, you shift, you change, and you get better at learning auditorially. Or when maybe when you're an adult, you turned it to being a lot more like that reading style, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's a little bit different, but you hit the nail on the head right there with there's no substitute for doing the thing,
Right.
right? So
You have to do
collecting
it.
that, you have to do it. You have to put something into practice because you can get into information hoarding. You
Mm-hmm.
know all of these things, but can you actually apply them? Well, it's
Can you do
irrelevant then.
any of them?
Right,
Can
right.
right. Yeah.
So learn. I tend to be very very kinesthetic and visual, but as I have gotten older, I have learned how I can apply my auditory and reading kind of receptors for learning.
Mm-hmm.
And the auditory is the hardest because I have a very easy talent or skill or whatever to just tune you out and to just go off in another world. So
Gotcha.
I've
Yeah.
learned that, like what you said, taking that active and participative role in writing things down, um, and writing certain things down helps solidify. I can't
Mm-hmm.
I can't sit there and take notes because I'm so focused on the act of taking note that I've not heard the next thing that the person has said. So I tend to write my impression. So if somebody says something good or poignant, I will write my thought on that thing, or like that was very important. I will write a portion of that thing so that I don't miss the next step of what they're talking about. Now, some people might just be like, nope, I can get it and just keep writing and keep writing. That's never been
Yeah.
me. Right.
Yeah.
So I've had to, find the different ways to kind of adjust or adapt and grow and learn and things. And I want to really, really like impress upon people that just because you are favoring this learning style or type right now doesn't mean that you're stuck there or that will always be that, right? Because you're
Sure.
going to learn and you're going to grow. And if you
Well, you
come at
kind
it
of
with
need
the
maybe
right,
at least a little bit of all of them.
agreed, because you're never going to have the perfect scenario
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
And so the to kind of relate all of these things to like the miniature painting is pick projects, pick teachers, pick students that kind of fit within that kind of paradigm of how you tend to grow and
Mm.
learn,
Mm-hmm.
because that way you're giving yourself the best like most fertile soil possible. And then
Yeah.
learn how to adapt and learn how to
Yeah.
grow.
Yep. Well, in learning a little bit how you learned as a kid and how as you've become an adult, you learn better, you learn differently now, kind of leads me into uh, andragogy.
Andrew Andrew Grogu.
Right?
I had a hard time pronouncing this word.
Yeah, yeah. Andragogy, as opposed to pedagogy or pedagogy, right? So pedagogy is teaching or leading children. Andragogy is teaching or leading adults, right? So this term was originally coined by a German educator. His name is Alexander Kapp. It was in 1833. So we're digging way back. right? So he coined the term, but it was developed into an adult educational theory by a guy. I'm going to butcher this name, Eugen Rosenstock-Huessy.
Okay.
He lived between 1888 and 1973. So
Okay.
with he died shortly after I was born. So we'll put it that way. Um, Interesting guy, by the way. Once the Nazis took root in and took over Germany in 1933, he noped out and he came to the States. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
how
Cool.
right. So that's how he ended up in the States. So good guy, right? Like noped out of Nazism. I'm all for that. And then the guy who shows up as kind of being the father of andragogy, the guy who really forwarded this style, this adult learning theory, was a guy by the name of Malcolm Knowles. He was
Okay.
U.S. born, and he had been collecting ideas and research on adult education ever since World War II, and was introduced to that term and continued that work through the 70s, 80s, and all the way up into the 90s before he died in 1997. So
Okay.
we're getting somewhat more recent here. Obviously, it's been 25 years since he passed away,
Hmm.
but this adult educational theory has continued since his death. So he kind of broke things down into six. You had what, four? I got
Yeah.
six. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
one up you, man. But when he studied the way that adults learn, right, and what they need when they learn, uh, one of the biggest things for adults is they need to know why. They need to know the reason they are learning something. Why do I
Okay.
care? Why do I care? Why am I learning this? I don't know if you like children generally are more receptive to just learning for the sake of learning. Like, well, the adult in the room says I got to learn this, so I'll just jump in and learn it. You get up into your adults and you're like, fuck off. Why do I have to learn this? Right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So one of the things that for adults is, and this section also might help anyone who is teaching or thinking about teaching. Dig around in andragogy and learn a little bit more than what we're sharing here, because it can really help you with your adult students if you're teaching at a convention,
For
right?
sure. For sure.
Adults come to learning with a whole bunch of life experience already. Excuse me. It provides a basis. They make more connections, right? Oftentimes adults will learn faster because they are making connections to other elements of their life that they have already learned,
Oh, so
right?
almost like oh, that's just like this one time that, and then they can and
Right.
make the connections, and then they go, I understand.
Yes, exactly
Oh,
that.
okay. All right.
Right.
Cool.
Another item that is important to adult education is autonomy or self concept, right? They need to be responsible for their own decisions on education. They need to, like, they got to be in charge, right? With kids, they don't necessarily have to be in charge. They'll kind of go with the flow, or well, I guess
For the most part.
most kids, right? Not all
Yeah.
of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But as people become adults, like, they get a little bit more resistance to, well, you can't force me to do this, right? They have to have a little bit more autonomy in their own educational outcomes, right? Um,
Okay.
so it helps to make sure that things are relevant, right? We need,
Okay.
why do I care about this? It kind of relates back to that why question, right?
Hmm.
They're most interested in learning subjects that have immediate relevance to their work or their personal lives.
Okay. Can
Why
I
is this? Go ahead.
can I pause you real quick there? Um, so I'm seeing a big trend in all of these,
Mm-hmm.
especially like with relevance and why. Maybe it's just the way that my brain works, but I see those almost as like a challenging type of an aspect. Am I reading that right? Meaning that
A
like
little
I'm
bit.
challenging the teacher. I'm in challenging you as to why do I need this? Why is this relevant? Am I reading that right?
Yes, it is. Well, it is a little bit more challenging, and it wouldn't necessarily even have to be challenging the instructor unless the instructor was, like trying to force it down their throats.
Hmm.
But adults, um, they need to, like, the autonomy bit is, you know, well, because the next one down the list is relevance.
Okay.
Adults are more interested in learning subjects that have immediate relevance. Well, if it's not relevant to me, why do I care? Maybe I don't, right? Or maybe I
Hmm.
do, and maybe in the process of learning, you find that relevance to you. Well, I didn't think this was relevant to me, but I realize now that it is, right?
Got it.
So a good instructor will help make it more relevant to their students.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
right? Problem oriented. They're much more problem oriented learners, right? How can I solve this problem? I can't blend well. How do I blend better? Right? How do I solve this problem that my blends look chunky and not smooth and right? How do I want to paint non-metallic metal and I can't mine looks like shit. So how do I solve this problem? Right?
Right. That
Um,
probably comes a lot from that like experience, right? Where they
yes,
have these problems that they're throughout their life are ticking
sure,
off.
right,
Yeah. Okay.
right.
I'm with you.
And adults also, we talked a little bit about this in the last episode of the podcast, which is adults tend to be a little bit more intrinsically motivated to learn when it is relevant, when they understand the why, when they have autonomy, when they can kind of set their own schedule and right. Um, and especially when their own when they reflect on their own experience and they find something that they have maybe a little bit more lacking, right? So then it's okay. I need to learn this, right? And so I'm intrinsically motivated to kind of close that gap to learn
Sure.
this skill.
That's interesting. I like all of these. And the first kind of immediate thought that I have with all of these is, uh, well, actually, I had two thoughts. One of them was a little bit more sarcastic and was like, "Check, yep, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me."
Yep.
But the other one too is that like each one of these things still has a bit of relevance and a truth towards children. But I think because like what you said, they're more like information sponges.
Right.
They're just kind of like, well, I want to know why, and it's okay, and
Right.
we move on, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with adults, because we have that experience, there might be a little bit more friction's not the right word, but there might be a little bit more back and forth
Right.
because we're all
and
wired a little
adults
different.
and adults might be willing to challenge an instructor a little bit more frequently or a little bit more pointedly and some of the research that's come out since Malcolm Knowles had passed and whatnot and some of the critiques around that also have to deal with even children can benefit from some of these theoretical points, right? So again, it's not complete pedagogy or complete andragogy. It's
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of both, and depending
Sure.
on who the student is, who the instructor is, knowing your student well enough to be able to like give them the right information at the right time, right?
For
Um,
sure.
right. There's another book by a guy by the name of Daniel Pink, and we'll leave a note down in the notes in the show notes. He wrote a book called Drive. I read it years and years ago, and a really really good. More recently I discovered he's got a YouTube channel, so I've been watching some of his stuff there.
Oh,
But
cool.
in Drive, he talks about what motivates people, mostly like in an office setting, right? So how do you get people who have to show up every day to be motivated enough to get their jobs done? And he talked a lot about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And that's what we need as adults. We need autonomy. We got to have some control over our lives, over our futures, where we're going, right? We got to have mastery. We got to have the skill. We need to have the skill to be able to get the job done, right? And we need to have the purpose. The purpose is, why am I doing it? It's right? Connecting those three things together, and I was reminded of those as of that book, not only from some of the research, but also as I read down through, why the experiential stuff, the autonomy, the relevance, the problem orientedness, the intrinsically motivatedness of the adult learning theory. I wonder how much of that he dug into and learned as a part of writing that book, because a lot of it kind of lines up.
I'm sure there's probably a lot of it in there, right? And
Oh,
kind of
sure.
all of these intermingle with one another, and right, so how do you, apply this principle of being problem oriented, and
Mm-hmm.
then diving a little bit deeper into it, and well, how is this individual going to learn this specific thing that's problem oriented? Well, they're probably going to be better at it more kinesthetically, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think these things all have a really good symbiotic relationship, right? So each of the learning modalities that I covered were very symbiotic in that you may have some a little bit more than others and a
Mm-hmm.
preference there. I think it's going to be the same thing with a lot of these and how they all interact with each other.
Right. Yeah, and in fact, like as I was kind of going through some of my research and kind of outlining some of these 6 points, I'm like, they do kind of start to get intermingled in my head, right? Like why and relevance are they're different, but they're pretty similar. Then they are related, right?
I think
So,
why is always a really useful portion because why can be applied to each one of them, which allows you to probe deeper into those things.
yeah.
So when you're talking about the relevance, that might be a little bit more surface level.
Mm-hmm.
The why can then help you go back up to that why, and then it can help you dive a little bit deeper in that it's not just going to be relevant to my day to day, but also within my life. And I think that's really important. That people, students really
Mm-hmm.
consider, and we're all students in life, right? Consider that each one of these things is going to have a unique relationship with one another
Right.
in that learning process. You and I can be in the exact same class for the exact same amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
but because your life experience and your brain is wired differently than mine, we're going to get something out of it in different proportions.
Right. And we
I
might
think
even
it's
come away
beautiful.
with completely different elements of
Yeah.
that class that really stick with us, right?
And so I think that that's beautiful. I'm actually going to look into that. What did you call it? Drive. I really really like the autonomy, mastery, purpose. For the last five, maybe about 5 years or so. Um, I've just the way I kind of think about it is I've been putting this a lot on the back burner in my life. I've
Mm.
always got it kind of cooking about these really kind of these three things, but I've called it, freedom, expertise, and purpose. That's kind of always been kind of cooking in my
Yeah.
brain. And I think if you don't have that freedom or that autonomy, I think people react very poorly and negatively, and especially when you are in an environment of learning and growth, if you don't have that freedom to explore and to just fill the space, I
Right.
think things get a little stifling.
Yeah.
And I also think that if you don't have a pursuit to try to master or expert, and you may never be an expert, you may never be a master,
Right. Oh, sure.
but if you don't have that purpose and that goal and that pursuit, I don't know. I think there's kind of like a hollowness to
Right.
life. Like, what's the
Right.
point in doing something if you're not going to try to get better at it?
Yep.
You know, I think I think it's very, very profound for
Mm.
human existence. Um,
Sure.
I think
So
those. Oh, continue.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to
I,
jump
I
to the
think
next
those.
section.
Yeah, I think those things are. Uh, I think those are mental collections that we need, which kind of which helps us have tools in the tool belt, and I think that leads into these other kind of physical collections that I wanted to also kind of talk about. I, I wish I could give credit to this person. I don't remember who said it, but it infected me. If you're if you're watching or listening, thank you so much. And he said to collect your colleagues, right? Pokemon, catch them all. And he explained this as in the same kind of realm of surrounding yourself with great people, because you're only as good as your surroundings. And so he basically just in this quick little thing said, you want to collect your colleagues, you want to surround yourself with three key people, and these key people are going to be kind of the backbone for your learning. So one of them is, the way that he put it was, your superiors, your equals, and your inferiors. Now, I know those words can sometimes have some stank on them, so
Yeah,
I've
sure.
shifted it a little bit to be, find a mentor, find a peer, and find a student.
Mm.
And the way that he talked about this, and the way that
I like
I've
those words
I've
better.
learned, I do too, right? They're a little bit more
Yeah.
encouraging, a little
Yeah.
bit more
Yeah.
positive. Um, is that everyone's at different stages of learning,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone is going to be able to provide something. Students, this is a huge thing that people, instructors often, discount. Students can teach you so much, because
Sure. Yeah.
if you think about it, right, they're so much closer to that starting line than you might be, and they may bring up a point that you just, oh, I haven't thought about that in a long time,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And each one of these, mentor, peer, and student, are going to have different approaches. That I think it's really important to learn from great people, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
they're great for a reason, right? Glean as much
Right.
information as you can.
Yeah.
I love to paint with friends and with
Mm.
peers, because whether or not, like, oh well, this guy's good at this and he's better at me than this, or he's not as good as me in this, that doesn't matter. We're all in that same kind of bouncing skill level.
Right.
We can
Yeah.
glean that information. And then I firmly believe, for me especially, is the thing that really solidifies my learning. And there's been studies on this type of learning, and that, you do all of this information gorging. You need to
Mm-hmm.
regurgitate it and teach it and instruct it. Because if I remember correctly, it was something to the tune of like 92% of your learning comes from being able to systematically organize it in your brain in a
Right.
digestible way to the next person.
Yeah.
And so, even though you're teaching and you're being generous to the next, it's also a selfish endeavor that you're further
Yeah.
reinforcing those
Somewhat.
habits.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Is like, do you really understand it if you can't explain it to somebody else?
Good point.
And that's
Very
the
good
and
point.
that's the thing is like so many instructors, teachers, educators that I've talked to um, said that they thought they understood a topic and then they started teaching it and realized
I don't know anything.
they didn't understand it nearly as well as they wanted to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or as well as they thought they did. And I found that in my own teaching too, right? If I'm putting together a class, I if I can't explain it, like there's a reason why there are some topics I have not yet taught because I don't feel like I understand them well enough in order to be able to teach them, right? And so that's kind of part of an educator's journey as well. Is look, I can paint non-metallic metal, but I haven't taught it yet, right? Um, so maybe someday, but that's the thing is, if I can't explain it well to someone else, can I really, do I really understand it?
Yeah. And it's also not just, I think the explaining portion is a huge component of it, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also the unknown. Someone's going to ask you
Yeah.
a question. If you aren't prepared to be able to have an answer to that question, and that answer, by the way, can be, I'm not 100% on this, or I'll get back to you, right?
Right.
That's
Sure.
that's a valid answer.
That's a
But if
valid
you're
answer.
not, if you're not prepared for that kind of thing, you probably should not be teaching it yet. I'm the same way. I teach, the things that I teach are very introductory level. And fun little story was when I first first started teaching these introductory level classes, I sat there, this will be easy. What do I do? I was
Yeah.
so far removed from that beginner mentality that
Right.
I really had to, I struggled and I had to kind of go, okay, how do I break this down into the simplest elements? How
Hmm.
do I get back into that learning, that beginning of that learning and discovery process? And that was learning in and of itself. It let me really just become a student again. And
Yeah. Yeah.
then it helped reinforce, okay, cool, I do know what I'm talking about in these particular degrees. Somebody inevitably asks something far more complex, but because I am so much more well versed in it, I can answer that question.
Hmm.
And I can even say, hey,
Yeah.
let's you and I talk at a separate time, because this is a little bit more in depth than what we, are originally going into, or something like that. I haven't taught anything about color theory, because just when I think I understand something about it, I go and I apply it, and it's like, well, this doesn't make sense because blah, 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 blah. I go, all right, well, I don't feel that confident in it. I haven't taught anything about skins. I struggle with skin tone all the time, and a lot of it has to do with I can't verbalize what it is I'm doing and why.
Yeah.
I can do it,
Yeah.
but
Skin tone's a tough one. I'm spending most of this year like just drilling down on skin tones and trying to understand them well enough to be able to paint them well. It's not that my skin tones are bad. I just want them to be so much better, right? So yeah.
same, same. I mean, I come from a vehicle and robot background. I don't have to paint skin. If I don't ever want to, I don't ever have to paint them. But that's not what I do, right?
Yeah.
That's not what this
Right.
podcast is about. It's like
Yeah.
growth and learning and adventure. Just one little aside. I want to point out. I had no intention of bringing this up, but it just sparked, and it was such a warm,
Yeah.
fuzzy
Go ahead.
thought. Um, we did a Christmas mini exchange with our friend group, right? And I painted something up, and I was like, oh, this will be really fun. I mailed it off. It was great. And I got just what, it was beautiful.
Mm.
I got this beautiful the Roman little cosmonaut or astronaut, I'm sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
from Ryan. And he sent me a an academic bust with a note that he basically was like, I love your attitude with learning on all of this, and I love that you have decided to get better with your organics, and they've gotten so good in the last year. Here's another little academic to just keep on that journey.
Well, that's cool.
And because I was getting really self-conscious. This is around Christmas time. I was getting really self-conscious of that, like, can I do other things? Like, I know I can do vehicles well, but can I actually do it? So that was one of those like feathers in my cap that I was like, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep doing
Yeah.
this and get
That's
better
awesome.
at it and stuff.
That's awesome.
So it's all of that, all the pursuit of all of that is just, I don't know, it's fantastic. And and
We give
and
Ryan a hard time, but he's a good guy.
he's a great guy. He's a really really good guy. And that's one of those, my collections. He's one of my
Yeah.
peers and even mentors in many respects, right? Because he is better at things than I am. That 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 relationship helps push you in a specific direction, right? Into
Sure.
towards your goals.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and to kind of, interweave with, that's relevant towards my goals. He had no idea, right? That was something that I was feeling self-conscious about, or that that was a goal that I was having. He noticed it, he pointed it out, and that was,
And
I
encourage you
think,
to do more.
encourage you to do more. It also was a bit of a reaffirmation of like, okay, I am doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can it be better? 100%. It can definitely be better. Um, and that helped reinforce these learning processes into my brain of trying new things, of being adventurous, of being curious, of
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trying to figure some of these things out, and then, leaning on that community. I can't stress that enough. It just collect them, collect your peers, man, collect your
Yeah. Good.
students and mentors.
Good. Good. All right. So we have like maybe three audience members left after most of an hour here, but
Yeah.
how do we want to help them craft their learning journey, right? And there are a couple of things here that I want to mention about the learning process, right? One is there are four things that you need that it takes to become an expert, right? And I discovered this. We'll leave a link down in the show notes. This came from Veritasium. I was doing a bunch of research as I was building my mental game class. So this section, I went out to my mental game slide deck and I just pulled this section right out. And I want to make sure that I share this with folks because you need a valid environment. Lucky thing for us, painting miniatures is a valid environment. Basically, you have the same inputs and you can get repeatable results, right? So if you do the same thing over and over again, you'll get the same result. Unlike something like roulette, where you can do the exact same thing and you get a different result. It's not a valid environment. So
Right,
lucky for
right.
us, painting is a valid environment. You need many, 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 many repeated attempts. Practice over and over and over and over, relentlessly
And
practice.
luckily, a lot of people start with wargaming and D&D where you're
Yeah,
painting 40 of the same thing. So you
right.
get you get
You
those reps
need
in.
the reps. You got to get
Yeah.
the reps in, right? You need timely feedback, right? If you keep doing the same thing without getting feedback to make those corrections, you're going to keep doubling down on the same mistake over and over again. And once that's ingrained, it's even harder to change later on down the line once it's become
Ah,
ingrained as habit. So get good timely feedback, right?
okay.
Getting good feedback is a skill in itself, right? And that's not
Oh, yes.
CNC welcome on a social media post. That's not You're not going to get good feedback there. Go to someone you trust and put one on one if possible, a coach if possible, and say, "Can you give me good feedback on this piece? Would you be willing to do that?" Right. Most of
Yes.
the time,
Yes.
go to someone you trust, someone you value their opinion of, and get that feedback. Right. And finally, don't get too comfortable. Practice at the edge of your ability.
Yes.
If it's too easy, it gets boring and repetitive. If it's too hard, you get overwhelmed and you give up. You want to thread that needle right in the middle, right? And
Mm-hmm.
just at the edge of just push yourself just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. You don't have to make giant leaps. Just push yourself, just keep yourself at the edge of your ability. So
Growth
those are the four
happens.
things that you
Growth
need to become an
happens,
expert. Yeah.
right? It happens right outside your comfort zone. I love those. Those last two, man, I struggle with all the time. Uh,
Mm,
it is something that I think that there's a lot of people that struggle with it more than what they'd like to admit. And I'm going to be the vulnerable one here. I struggle with feedback.
mm,
Uh, and that's a mental thing that I have to get over.
yeah.
Sometimes not a problem. Here, give me some feedback. Oh yeah, this is really good. I can separate. But when I dive
Hmm.
hundreds of hours into a project and I'm so happy with X and Y and
Right.
doing all of these different things that like I'm not getting comfortable. I'm on the outside of my comfort zone. I had no idea. I tackled that project, that's
Yeah.
that problem. And is it the best I could have possibly done? No, but it was the best I could have done at that time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then to hear somebody talk and rip it apart.
Hmm.
Oh, I mean
So
we've all been
one
there.
thing, yeah, one thing that might help you is put a little bit of time between finishing the project and getting the feedback. That might be able to help. The other thing to remember is that it, it's not personal.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah, yeah.
you are not your piece. You are separate from your piece, right?
Yes. Very
And
much so.
the piece might suck, but that doesn't mean that you don't,
Yes.
or that doesn't mean. Let me resay it. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
The piece might be less than it could be, right? The piece might suck, but that doesn't mean you do.
Yes.
You still have value. You created it, and you're still on your learning journey. And so um, and another thing to keep in mind too is like who you get feedback from sometimes matters, right?
Oh, for sure.
Giving feedback is a skill unto itself. just like getting good feedback from someone else
Yes.
is a skill. Those are separate skills,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Very much so.
So if
Very
you
much
go to
so.
someone who is not skilled at giving good feedback, you might get some feedback that's a little
Yeah.
rough to take, right?
Shit in, shit out, right?
Right, right.
You
So,
gotta, and like, I really like that you said, go to someone that you trust. And that can be that mentor or your peer to be able
mm-hmm.
to like, hey, we're on the understanding that you're not a terrible person. This was just a terrible decision. Or this
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just, I see what you were
yeah,
going with, but not quite. And like what you said, there is a skill in being able to deliver that
right.
effectively and
Yeah,
appropriately.
yeah,
I I go through waves where no problem. I can get feedback, not a problem. I know that it's not personal.
mm-hmm.
I can give that space, but there are some where I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I'm like romantically entangled in it, right? Because I've
Mm,
thought up this dream scenario and I have
yeah.
these like the I did the thing. I didn't know how to do it and I achieved it. And oh, I feel so good about it. And then someone says this and you're just like, did I do anything right? You know?
Oh fuck. Yeah. No, I've
Yeah.
been there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I do think you hit it really well as time. I had a particular piece that I still it's one of my favorites that I've ever done. It's because it's very metaphoric. It's very unusual to what I was normally doing, and it was my god. I call it the goddess of spring. She's got her instrument from hex figures, and she's ushering in a wave of spring, and that really resonated with me. I loved it. It was really fun, and I got some feedback right away, and I kind of wasn't in a mind to hear it because I didn't
Mm,
want to put a damper on my parade. And so I waited many months
yeah.
and I gave it to people.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you see? I'm so further removed from it, and
Sure.
a lot of the times people were like this. Oh, I didn't see that, or yes, I've been actually marinating on that, and I think that that's a really healthy healthy approach. And I want to ask you a question. How do you no, how do I phrase that? How do you stay uncomfortable? I'm curious. I want to pick your brain on that, on for that last point.
Well, it kind of gets into the learning journey, right? So I often will kind of reflect on where I think I'm decent, where I think I need work. Um, I'm usually trying to work on something that I feel. So, for example, skin, right? Like beginning of this year, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to do as many pieces as I possibly can this year that feature skin in some way. I want my skin to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing that. And I'll get done with a piece and I'll like it and I'll start picking up the next piece and I look back at the other one. I'm like, oh, that looks flat. Okay. So how do I keep pushing forward? Well, sometimes it's working with a coach. Sometimes it's working with an instructor or taking a class that kind of pushes me outside of my normal, you know, comfort zone, if you will. Or it's just how do I keep pushing on? How do I stay on the edge?
Yeah.
It's just always pushing. There's more. There's something else I could have done. There's a different color scheme I could have used. There's a different skin tone I could have gone for. How like do I need to practice this kind of skin tone a couple more times until I feel like I've understand it better? I've got a couple of pieces that are. One of them is a Native American bust. It's from Crown Miniatures. I'm
Oh, I know
really
the one.
looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that piece, but I am afraid of it. I'm not. I don't think I'm not quite ready for it yet. So sometimes getting just the right tone, right, and figuring out how to get the volumes um, highlighted just right, or understanding the anatomy well enough to understand this musculature that's under the skin and how that affects the top layer of the skin and how that affects the highlights and such.
Sure.
It's just it's there's always something else to learn and then apply to the next piece, to the next
Yeah.
bust, to the next figure.
Yeah. No, I think that that's. I think that is one of the biggest ways that I like to do that. I like to throw one little extra thing into my process is I like to do something that I don't know how to do, but it's just on the edge. So I'll give you an example, right? Um, I have this diorama in my head that I have had in my head for, I guess, going on 5 years, maybe a little
Mm.
bit more now. And it has gone through multiple iterations. It started super grand, it's gotten real small, it's gotten real, all these different iterations and stuff. And I've kind of settled on what the kind of general sizing is. I've gotten some coaching on it. Well, maybe this didn't work, whatever it might be. And then I wrote it all out. I put a project board together and I
Yeah.
realized I don't know how to do any of it. And rather than trying to eat the elephant, I thought, okay, that needs to be my white whale for right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can I break it into digestible chunks? Well, I need to know how to do work with plastic art, for example. I've never worked with it. How can I make
Yeah. Yeah.
how can I do a project where I can in a minimal practice environment? So I did something with a little bit of plastic art here. I did something with a little bit of like natural sculpting there.
Right.
Or let's I need to know nail composition. Well, let's do something that has a little bit more composition focused. And so I'm kind of taking chunks out of it that I don't know what I'm doing in a lower
You
risk
take on
environment.
projects to teach you about the skills you need for the next project. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This project that I'm working on is probably the most physically demanding in terms of like the actual build and
Yeah.
things because I'm fabricating most
Right. Sure.
everything in the entire
Sure.
scene. I've
Most
never done that.
dioramas are.
Yeah, yeah,
Dioramas are a
and
lot of fabrication.
yep, it's that. What's that problem? Let's find that solution. And I've never done it to this scale.
Sure.
And I think but because I did these like four or five other things beforehand, I feel just a little bit more prepared. Like I'll give you a good example. At Nova last year, I took a private workshop with Chris Surrey. Amazing, by the way. If anyone's ever interested in anything diorama, he's the guy.
He
Um,
is the guy.
I didn't know that you can just score and snap plastic cards.
Mm.
I was going through sketching out on my plastic card, taping down my rulers on my mat, and just with a knife, as much as I like sawing at it and pushing at it. And
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
like, "No, dude, just give it a good three or four, and then just snap, and then clean it up." It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh! So all of a sudden now I can put that in the tool belt, and now it's I'm much less afraid of making these more dynamic cuts and things like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean that leads back to your collection of peeps, right? You're
Yep.
a mentor.
Yep.
I needed that.
Yep. Yep.
All right, you
All right. So
have a
last.
big
Go ahead.
keystone for this, and it's a big word. My brain, my smooth brain, doesn't know how to pronounce this word. What's the
Is that the
keystone?
Ultradian cycle? Is that the one you're talking
Ultra,
about?
yes, yes,
Ultradian. All right.
Ultradian cycle.
So this is gonna go back to our last episode a little bit, right? So an ultradian cycle is basically kind of like the way that our brains, our human brains, function in terms of focus and then needing rest. So the circadian rhythm, right? The circadian cycle is day and night, right? We're up all day, we go to sleep, we sleep all night, and so that's the circadian rhythm. The ultradian rhythm is we as human beings tend to be able to focus for up to about 90 minutes, like deep focus, like hardcore deep focus for about 90 minutes, and then we need about 20 minutes of rest. And it turns out that if you are trying to learn something, if you can focus. Now, if you are a wind type, go see the last episode, right? Maybe don't start at 90 minutes. Maybe start with 30 minutes and start to build up. Find, but most and again, this is kind of like geared toward the average human, right? So your ultradian cycle might run a little faster as shorter cycles or longer longer cycles. But start, normally it's about 90 minutes. You can focus for about 90 minutes. So as an example of that, when I was working on the little bugbears for, I was working on those. I came down here at 6 o'clock in the morning on my one of my days off, and I sat down. And I'd been up since before then, but I came down. I remember it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I came down. I sat down. I started painting, and I looked up, and it was 7:30. Well, that's 90 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. You
And like,
blinked.
and that 90 minutes was gone. But it was like, so that was like great flow state, but it was also, that's that ultradian cycle that caused me to look up and realize that 90 minutes had passed, right?
Hmm.
So then I got up, I took a little break, right? And then you can do that 2, 3, 4 times a day, if depending on how your work stamina is, right? But that works for any task, for any, at work or as you're painting or as you're learning, if like deep focus for about 90 minutes and then take a break. Your brain needs the 20-minute break.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
This all
You can
makes
push
sense.
yourself past that, but it's diminishing returns. Your
Sure.
brain needs that break.
No, that's really interesting because I'm just thinking about it like in my own life, and I kind of have been doing it subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
I never had a kind of a word to put to it. Now, obviously, like what you said, plus or minus, right? Depending upon what it is you're doing. What I've noticed is, especially when it's something that takes a lot of brain power, like especially within this hobby where I am I have to be
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to every brush stroke, to every color choice.
Yep.
I'm only at about 60 to 70 minutes, and I need to just step away and just, okay.
Yeah. Take
I
a
call
breath.
that the I call that the brain buster, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
doing this thing that I'm locked in, but then I'm like, oh, okay, I need to go make a sandwich. I need to go walk the dog. I need to do something to just
Yeah.
relax.
Yeah.
But when it's something that I'm focusing on that I've done it a bunch of times, I can get up to, 90, 100, 120 minutes
Sure.
and flow.
Yeah.
So it's that's
And that,
interesting. That's really interesting.
and what's it? So here's a connection. Here's a curious connection that I made. Some years ago, I learned. I was learning more about whales and like their cycles, but whales will kind of bob around on the surface of the water. They'll come
Hmm.
up for air, right, and then they'll come back up for air, and they're kind of like, and they'll breathe, and then when they dive and they're hunting, right, they'll come up for a big breath, and they'll dive, and they will be underwater and they're deeper and deeper. That's about a 90-minute cycle for them to dive all the way down there,
Interesting.
catch the squid or whatever it is they're eating, right? And then come back and hunt, and then they come back up, right? Whoops. They come back up, and then they'll bob in for about 20 minutes or so before they take another deep dive.
Interesting. So they're
I
based they're like cycles of stress kind of, right? Like
Yeah, they
or
so
demand.
like sometimes these cycles exist in more than one place, and it's just kind of interesting where we find them.
Wow. Huh. No, I really like that because I do think like what you said, diminishing returns, right? That when it, if you're just burning for the sake of burning, you're spinning your wheels, whatever metaphor, insert metaphor here. I've noticed that I tend to then dislike what I'm working on much more because
Mm.
I'm just ramming my head
If you're
into it.
just grinding, if you're just
Yeah.
grinding, you're just putting. I mean, you're like you've lost, and especially in terms of like learning, you've lost the effectiveness of what you're cramming in there. Now you're just hoarding information, and it's not coming back out. And like how much, like let's say your brain is like, I don't know, like 8 ounces, right?
Hmm.
And you can pour a gallon of water in there, and how much is it going to hold? It's going to hold 8 ounces.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you're just wasting, you know, study effort, practice effort, if you're not taking those breaks.
It it's interesting. Throughout college, I never liked doing cramming sessions. I knew
Yeah,
tons of people within the university that would just, I can't,
I
I
did
got
them.
cram. I just, kind of intrinsically just was like, it's midnight. I'm out. I'm going to bed.
Yeah,
Whatever
yeah.
happens, happens. just,
I did them. I didn't like them, but I did them.
sure, sure. I mean, and wouldn't to say that like I never did them, but like I just kind of had this. No, I value the rest portion. I value the rest portion. I need it.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
All right. So a couple of
This has
last things
been
here.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. Let's get
All
on to
right.
the next thing.
Yeah. So last couple things here is about taking classes at conventions and getting
Oh yeah.
coaching. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, if you take classes at conventions, and classes at conventions are a great way to pick up new skills and learn new things and that sort of thing. Here's one thing that I will recommend you not do. Do not stack up your entire convention full of 3 classes a day every day, right? Because what happens, we just kind of talked a little bit about the ultradian cycle. What happens is you take all those classes and then you get home and you realize you've forgotten half of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when and I did it. Guilty. I did
Same.
it. And I got home
Same.
and like a couple of months later I'm like, what did I learn in that class? I don't remember any of it. Where are
Yeah.
my notes?
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of remember this a little bit now that I'm looking back at my notes, but it's mostly gone. So when you take classes at conventions, if you can, if there's a topic that you were trying to learn, try to dial in on that topic, right? So, for example, like skin tones. I'm just going to use skin tones as the example. Like, take skin tone classes from 2 or 3 different instructors, but it's all
Sure.
on
Yeah.
skin tones. And don't overwhelm yourself. If you overwhelm yourself, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, um, because it's not going to stick. And that kind of works against me a little bit as a convention instructor, right? Because I like to fill seats,
Oh,
but
same. Same.
right, but as a student, like don't overwhelm yourself with too much information too fast,
Yeah.
right?
You're also less likely to enjoy
Yeah,
the actual convention itself, right? Each convention is going to be unique in its own way, and there's different things that you can do, and even outside of the convention of just getting together with people to go out and eat,
yeah,
you're going to miss out on those opportunities because you
right,
stack your schedule
right,
so
yeah,
so
yeah,
much, and then
yeah,
you go, well, this was I had a blast, but I'm exhausted, and it's
right,
probably because you're mentally overloaded on a lot
right,
of these.
yeah,
No, great
yeah,
advice. I've done it before, and like what you said, like yeah, I no no come to my class. I want you to
right,
learn from
yeah,
my
yeah,
class. But I mean, I also want you to get the value out of it.
right, yeah,
It really kind of hurts me as an instructor to have students not gain value.
right,
I always want them
yeah.
to have some sort of value out of it. So that's a really good, really good tip for sure.
Yep. And then finally, if you can, I understand like the economy sucks, the budgets are tight. If you can get coaching, it's worth it, right? Find a
Always.
coach that you trust, right? Devin, I think you do coaching. I do
Uh
some
huh.
coaching. But this is not meant to be a commercial. There are lots of coaches out there. There are a lot of
Oh
people
yeah.
out there who do a really good job at working with people one on one. If you can afford it, right? It's right. It's worth it. If you can't afford it, find a community of people of your peers because some of them are going to be better at you at the thing you're trying to learn.
For
Um,
sure.
so get in more informal coaching that way, right? Join a community of people who are about your same level. Start a community if you need to, but join a community of people. Discords are all around. Find a few people that you think are your peers and develop those relationships and start giving each other feedback.
For sure. In regards to the coaching too, I almost treat it kind of like kind of like a therapist. Don't be afraid to
Mm.
shop around.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to
Yeah.
find the right fit for not every single coach is going to be the right fit. So if someone were to come to me for private coaching, the very first thing I do is I try to do a little bit of vetting with them of
Yeah. Yeah.
what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Does this all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, now I'm not going to steer you away, but I want you to be, involved, and I won't ever be upset that you said, I did some coaching with you, Devin, but I'm taking coaching with Dan because he's doing X, Y, and Z that I feel like I connect more. Great, amazing.
Sure.
Are you getting that value? I love it. Rising tide raises all ships. So
Right. Yeah.
if Dan succeeds, that just makes that I think that makes it that much more fertile for me to succeed.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that you don't get locked in to that guilt of, well, but like I've done like 4 or 5 sessions with him, but if you're not connecting, you're not connecting, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And also, don't be afraid to
Well, and
go and get. Oh, sorry, last thing is
yeah, go ahead.
get coaching for those. I only want to do 2 sessions with you. That's okay too.
Yeah. Yep.
Like there can be an end time to it.
Yeah. I want to work with you to learn this topic. And then once this topic's done, that's probably going to be it.
Yep, yep,
Right.
and
And then
that's
you can
okay
reevaluate. And then you can
for sure,
reevaluate and continue, or you can stop there.
for sure.
Um, yeah.
I mean,
So,
I've had students that they've done that. I don't take it personally. I'd
right.
love to have them keep returning because I think it's
Sure.
fun. I think it's interesting. But hey, that's just how it is. Like what we said earlier. It's not personal. It's not an attack or an affront on you as an instructor or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just how it kind of goes, and that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
great great thought.
I think we are a little long here, Devin, but I think that was a pretty good episode. Hopefully,
I do too.
right? Like it's all about the learning. It's all about
It
the
it
learning.
really is, and being adventurous and curious. So I want to kind of like let's wrap it up in a little bit of a bow, right? So we talked a little bit about the learning styles or modalities. So I have a question
Mm-hmm.
for the audience. Put it in the comments. You guys know what to do. We've been around technology long enough. Like how do you learn best?
Yeah.
We talked about
Yeah.
auditory, visual, reading and writing, kinesthetics, or maybe you've got a healthy mix of them. I'd actually be really, really intrigued to know how the community likes to learn and what they tend to, preference towards. Like lean into that style. And that's okay, but also explore, right? Like just
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not an auditory learner as my preference doesn't mean that I'm not going to gain value out of that. Explore, like learn a little bit about that, and just be curious about it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And a point of reflection. This is the really the main thing. Put this in the what did you call it? The clickety bits. Put it in the
Put
clickety bits, right?
there's
The whole
clickety
life.
bits around. You know how to use
Yeah,
them.
they're all around them, right?
Yeah.
Is a point of reflection. What have you learned? And kind of chew on that, right?
Yeah.
What are you still missing within these learning modalities? Maybe you're missing a community, right?
What are you
Maybe
trying to
you're
learn? Let
yeah,
us know in
right.
the
What do you
comments what you're trying to learn.
Yes, absolutely. And reflect on that, right? Do we want to continue? Do we want to pivot? Is this too much for me at this time? Like really, really sit and reflect on it. And then how you can kind of utilize those learning styles that you tend to lean towards
Right.
most effectively.
Sure. Awesome.
Love it.
Well, thanks everybody. Stay curious out there and paint something you
And
love.
paint something you love. Stay curious.